Behind every large number, there's a reason that goes far deeper than money. And in Jungkook's case, the figure paid by one particular global brand, its name sealed inside confidential documentation, isn't just high. It's beyond any rational limit within the endorsement world. Not Calvin Klein, not the brand the public always associates with his most iconic campaigns. This one stands behind the curtain, yet its transaction has become the most whispered topic among executives across the luxury industry. Insiders familiar with the documents say the deal with Jungkook was never about a simple promotional contract. The amount itself signals something larger. The brand wasn't buying fame, it was buying exclusivity embodied in a single human being. When his face appears, the impact is not comparable to any other celebrity. There's a total resonance that defies traditional marketing logic. If Calvin Klein made Jungkook the face of modern rebellion and style, this undisclosed brand treated him as a living value, an asset calculated like a long-term investment. Jungkook isn't measured by campaign performance or quarterly sales. He's measured by the shift in how people perceive the brand itself. And that's where everything turns absurd. The number attached to his name surpasses most celebrity contracts in Hollywood, even those once considered the highest in luxury advertising history. The exact figure remains buried within sealed clauses. Yet fragments leaking from internal reports hint at a scale that sounds unreal. It's not a matter of millions. It's far beyond that, larger than what several global fashion houses spend collectively in a year on marketing. And that alone reveals something crucial. Jungkook has entered a level the market itself isn't yet ready to define. It's not just popularity, it's the way this brand calculated his personal influence. In an industry obsessed with trends, Jungkook stands as the contradiction. He isn't part of a trend, he is the standard that shapes the next one. That alone makes him too valuable to fit into any usual category. Where Calvin Klein positioned Jungkook as a symbol of confidence and modern sensuality, this secret brand saw something different. They weren't buying an image. They were securing control over a perception. Jungkook possesses a rare ability to transform how people view something simply by being associated with it. When he wears or endorses a product, its value rises not because of the ad strategy, but because it feels genuinely connected to who he is. That is what they paid for the intangible, the real, the impossible to copy essence. According to one internal report, within 3 months of their collaboration, the brand's overall equity value rose more than it had in the previous 3 years combined. That data wasn't accidental. It was the result of precise tracking each digital interaction, each public shift in perception, each time Jungkook's name was tied to luxury. The outcome shocked even the boardroom. Jungkook wasn't promoting a product. He was reshaping how the public relates to the brand itself. That kind of transformation almost never happens in business. Most celebrity partnerships generate temporary boosts. Jungkook created a permanent one. He didn't just expand the market, he changed it from the inside. Products that once felt unreachable to younger audiences suddenly became aspirational again. The brand wasn't just relevant, it was reborn. The decision to pay Jungkook a number that defied logic wasn't impulsive. Inside the meeting rooms, where names of other global stars were laid out on long tables, only one argument settled the debate. His narrative power. Jungkook doesn't need to speak. He doesn't need to explain. His presence alone tells the story. In a world where authenticity has become the rarest currency, he is the last person who doesn't have to prove it. That's why, when the payment document was finalized, no one questioned whether he was worth it. The only question was whether they could afford to sustain him. Because Jungkook, at this level, isn't a marketing expense. He's a brand-defining force. Once the number was approved, the company understood they weren't purchasing a face, they were purchasing time. Influence like his can't be replicated, replaced, or manufactured. For years, brands have tried to understand the formula behind his reach. But the answer is simple. He never sells himself. He only aligns with projects that fit his identity. That's why every campaign he touches feels genuine, not orchestrated. The hidden brand knew that to stand next to him, they couldn't just pay a high price, they had to pay the right price. Analysts later described it as the boldest investment in the history of Asian luxury collaborations. But beyond analysis, it symbolized an acknowledgement of the new global order Jungkook represents. He isn't the face of youth culture anymore. He's the face of global balance, a person who makes the world stop categorizing him as a K-pop artist and start seeing him as a universal figure of influence. The contract amount is, in truth, a mirror of how far the world has shifted. Where luxury once revolved around Hollywood elites, Jungkook now sits at the top of that table not through controversy or exposure, but through pure resonance. He represents the modern ideal: quiet power, unforced confidence, and unshakable authenticity. There's a phenomenon insiders quietly call the silence effect. It's the way Jungkook commands attention without noise. He doesn't need an announcement. He doesn't chase virality. He simply appears and the world adjusts its focus. That's why the amount paid to him seems absurd only to those still thinking within the old frameworks of influence. According to an internal audit document, after the payment was processed, the company deliberately restricted access to certain marketing data. It wasn't fear of exposure, it was strategy. They didn't want Jungkook's value to be reduced to a dollar figure. They knew that once the number became public, the narrative would shift from impact to price, from meaning to measurement. And for them, this collaboration was too important to be simplified like that. Still, fragments leaked. Several reports suggested the payment was equivalent to what 3 global fashion icons combined might earn under long-term global contracts. Even within the documentation, the amount was encrypted using internal codes, ensuring that no one outside the top circle could trace the real number. That secrecy alone tells the story this was not a transaction. It was an acknowledgement of unmatched human value. What followed proved the decision right. Sales climbed, yes, but that wasn't the point. The brand's entire image evolved. What once seemed rigid and overly formal transformed into something refined, calm, and magnetically authentic, all because of one person capable of turning visual presence into emotional connection. The effects haven't faded. Each time Jungkook appears in public wearing a piece from this undisclosed brand, silence spreads across digital spaces. Not because people are uninterested, but because everyone recognizes they're witnessing something beyond advertising. He's not selling, he's redefining the concept of worth itself. In luxury marketing, value has always been attached to scarcity. Jungkook has made that rule irrelevant. With him, value isn't created by what's rare, it's created by what feels real. And that's why the number this brand paid, however absurd it sounds, will never be questioned by those who understand how the modern audience connects to authenticity. The logic behind this deal can't be explained through standard business models. It sits in the space where culture meets identity, where presence becomes persuasion, and silence becomes the loudest form of influence. Jungkook has made that his territory. And the brand that recognized it first simply decided to pay the price of recognizing genius before the rest of the world caught up. The brand's silence became the loudest confirmation of all. No announcement, no press release, no public statement. Just a quiet line in a document sealed under multiple confidentiality layers. For the outside world, it looked like nothing happened. But inside the industry, everyone knew something unprecedented had taken place. It wasn't just about hiding a number. It was about protecting the integrity of what the deal represented. The company understood that once figures are exposed, perception changes. People begin comparing, ranking, and attaching meaning to money instead of value. That's why this collaboration remained untold in detail. It lived in private circles, spoken only between executives who knew what Jungkook's influence truly costs. The contract itself was structured unlike any other. It gave Jungkook the final say on creative direction, image release, and campaign timing. That kind of control is rare in global marketing. But the brand agreed, because they knew that the moment they dictated the message, they would lose the very essence they paid for. Jungkook's image isn't manufactured. It works only when it's his own. Every clause reflected that understanding. He wasn't treated as a model or ambassador, he was treated as an equal. And perhaps that's what made the entire deal more than money. It was respect in its highest form. The kind that can't be printed in a headline or converted into currency. Over time, the results became impossible to hide. The brand's visibility climbed, but not through ads, through presence. The mere sight of Jungkook in association with their design created anticipation that no campaign budget could buy. His influence turned scarcity into art and silence into dominance. What began as a confidential contract became a quiet revolution inside the luxury world. The model of celebrity marketing changed. Companies stopped chasing numbers and began chasing authentic alignment, a term now synonymous with Jungkook's name. In the end, the payment, no matter how unimaginable, was never the real story. The real story was how one person redefined value itself. He didn't negotiate for money. He negotiated for ownership of his image. And that decision made the payment secondary. The brand that paid him understood this truth. Some influence can be bought, but not Jungkook's. His value exists in a place where money stops mattering and meaning begins. That's why the document remains sealed. Not to hide the number, but to protect what it symbolizes. Because if the world ever saw it, they'd realize the figure was never absurd. It was simply the cost of truth.